because I didn't know what area to even select to pick to make my comments or to even register. Until our city's homeless advocacy issues are permanently eradicated, it just makes sense to have its own designated category for regular discussion. I have been privy to each time someone brings up anything to do pertaining to homelessness.
30 seconds.
A lot of the other meetings that have been listed. That's really fast. Okay. The consensus of myself, along with several other Pasadena residents, including those that make up a variety of the homeless coalitions, would be that the permanent housing of elderly, veterans, and families need to be done. This decision needs to be made. I know that we have some rezoning issues that needs to be taken care of. I know we have a budget that's I'm hoping we're going to talk about as far as the allocation of those funds.
Reverend, your time is expired. If you want to bring your comments to a close.
Okay. The last thing I'll just say is that this is what I see overall. Something's got to be done. Rezoning, we have churches that are available, have land. We need to do something. It's getting cold out there. If the city hall, the members, you guys could please make decisions,
Reverend,
so that we can get this taken care of, I would certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you. Still no Alan Shea or Bubba Denham, so we'll go to Kat Ross, followed by Michael Williams. Ms. Ross, 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm interested to know how City Council is planning to track the likely increase in racial profiling as a result of ShotSpotter. When responding to a council member's question about how it worked, the officer who spoke about ShotSpotter said it would send officers to the alert location where they would stop suspicious-looking people, not the 30-year-old woman pushing a stroller. And this raises the question, who are the suspicious people? I think it implies that there is an age, a gender, and I would say probably a race, that they are considering more suspicious than others. In a city where police who beat or kill its residents and are not held accountable, an increase in racial profiling is of grave concern because it's risking the lives of our BIPOC residents. If officers who initiate a stop for a tinted window end up beating a resident, or initiate a stop for expired tags and end up killing residents, what will they do if they think they're responding to shots fired and not just automobile violation? I'd love to hear how you're planning to track ShotSpotter's impact on the community at your next time that gets brought up. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Michael Williams, followed by Hiram Cormier Jr.
Mr. Williams, welcome.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Mr. Williams, we can hear you. Go ahead. Your 2 minutes start now.
I listened to the public meeting that you had last Wednesday, and I'm constantly re-disappointed in the leadership of the city of Pasadena, how much it doesn't want to hold anyone within its department, police department, accountable for things such as murder. I've heard constantly.
Mr. Williams, because we want to hear your comments. You know, if you could, you may have a mask, or maybe you can move closer to your microphone.
We're having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
You're a little distant.
You have 1 minute and 30 seconds. I paused it. Go ahead.
I've heard constantly that the policy that if your policies do not allow you to fire someone who murdered someone, it doesn't allow you to fire someone who has taken someone else's life, who has beaten someone. And if that's the case, if your policies don't allow you to remove that person from their duties so that they cannot enable others to think that that is okay, and that is a way to be within our police department, then I think this policy is stupid, and I think whoever came up with that policy should be fired. I think that policy should be changed immediately. It's ridiculous that that is an excuse not to remove someone who has murdered someone. Can you imagine your last moments on earth being pinned down on the ground while you bled out, or being strapped down and suffocated and then being spit on, or having to run for your life and then being shot in the back? Can you imagine that? And then can you imagine sitting and hearing
30 seconds.
life doesn't have meaning, or you can't receive justice for your life being taken because of a policy that says that nothing can be done? Fix the policy, fire the officers that killed Anthony McClain. It's just the right thing to do. It's simple. Don't come up with any more excuses, because we're not buying it. Fire the officers that killed Anthony McClain.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Your time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
All right, so as other callers raised, I'm also raising that you fire the officers who killed Anthony McClain before you leave office. Vermel. Yes, it is true. The council does have the power as elected officials who were chosen to serve the people, when an employee of the city, also known as a cop, kills somebody. You do have that power. And there is no policy in the world that removes a human being of his dignity, respect, and worth. We were born as people, and no matter how many laws you pass, you cannot deprive us of our human rights. So since you deprived Anthony McClain of his life, you need to bring justice to his life and his family. You do know that the majority of people, Black people included, have a family, children, friends who love us. And as parents, we raise our kids up to be fully fledged, moral human beings. We spend time with them. We do everything we can. And then just all of a sudden, because one man feels so insecure, he just removes that flower you planted from the earth. Does that sound fair? No.
30 seconds.
And then these same people will sit here and not do anything to remedy that. And in fact, they'll allow it to continue by sitting idle. So again, fire those officers, and we're demanding a policy that makes it disciplinary action for police misconduct mandatory and unsubjective, out of the hands of the cops. As we said last week, stop trying to squirm and wiggle away.
Thank you. Your time has
Fire
expired.
those cops, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier.
Dia DeGroot, followed by Anthony Manusos.
Mr. Group?
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor. Yeah, good evening, Mayor Gordo and members of the City Council. My name is Thea DeGroot. I've lived in Pasadena for over 20 years, most of those years in rented housing. I came as a graduate student, and I now work in a local nonprofit. Since arriving, I've found ways to afford to live in Pasadena by mostly staying off the open rental market and sharing my accommodations with housemates. After 20 years, I finally purchased a home in District 5 with 3 other non-related owners. Pasadena needs residents like me who are contributing citizens to Pasadena, but not bringing in a 6-digit salary. If Pasadena loses the retired, the essential workers, laborers, teachers, and nonprofit staff because we can't afford Pasadena, what kind of city would it be? There's an opportunity for Pasadena to make a place for people who can't compete for the luxury apartments going up around town. I support the proposal to rezone church land for affordable housing in Pasadena. To make this work, affordable housing developments usually need at least 40 to 50 units. Most church land in Pasadena is not zoned to accommodate this density, so we need rezoning for these parcels. And there should be by right zoning rather than a discretionary waiver, so that we can get affordable housing into all parts of the city. This is the responsibility, and I contend, opportunity for all districts. If we do not assure that multifamily affordable housing gets into all parts of the city,
30
then we will be
seconds.
perpetuating racist and classist exclusionary zoning. Thank you for your commitment to housing justice for our community, and I know that you will do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Anthony Manusos, followed by Margaret Lee, who is not yet checked in, followed by Marcos Canales, who is not yet checked in, followed by Heavenly Hughes, who is checked in. So this is Anthony Manusos. Go ahead. You have 2 minutes, Mr.
Hi there.
Manusos. Yes, go ahead.
Or can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you. I will try to be brief. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm here to urge you to take action as soon as possible to consider and approve rezoning congregational land for affordable housing by right. This proposal came up a year ago and has been needlessly postponed. This week, I sent you an article about Andre White, a Harvard-trained affordable housing expert that recently appeared in Pasadena Journal, Pasadena's independent African-American newspaper. Andre White calls for rezoning religious land for affordable housing. Andre is a member of our MHCH Congressional Land Committee and sees affordable housing as a racial justice issue. So I hope you'll read this article and take this message to heart. I also hope you've read the CHCD critique of the current housing element. The state is calling for the city not just to study and ponder new affordable housing policies, but to take meaningful action to meet its RHNA goals. At the end of HCD's letter, it says, HCD received comments with many valuable suggestions relating to the housing element. It lists proposals endorsed by the Pasadena Affordable Housing Coalition, which now has 15 organizations, and includes rezoning religious land for affordable housing. The CDC strongly encourages the city to consider and address these comments. A year ago, Councilmember Kennedy boldly called on the council to produce 1,000 units of affordable housing for low and very low residents in 1,000 days.
30
I
seconds.
commend Mr. Kennedy for challenging our city in this way. But I have a question. What concrete action has the council taken in the past year to reach that goal? How many new units of affordable housing have you approved besides the Civic Center? What new policies have you adopted that would create more affordable housing? I hope you take these questions to heart, and better yet, take some action.
Thank you. So Alan Shea, Bubba Denham, Margaret Lee, and Marcos Canales are still not in the meeting, so we'll turn to Heavenly Hughes. Victor Hodgson is not.
Mayor,
Mr. Kennedy?
the question from the previous speaker possibly can be answered rather quickly because we have over 1,000 units of affordable housing in various categories that are actually being built presently. We don't have the actual numbers, but we have that number and we need to share it and share it widely. I think it would be helpful for the council and for the community to know that.
Yeah, it's that information is on our website, but we can feature it prominently. There are. Yeah, and it's actually in the report this evening related to the general plan report, and so we'll cover that when I'll ask Mr. Reyes to highlight that when he gives his report. But it is in his report related to the general plan this evening.
Thank you, Mayor.
That information. Thank you.
So we'll turn to Heavenly Hughes. Victor Hodgson is not checked in. So we'll have Jasmine Richards Abdullah following Heavenly Hughes.
Ms. Hughes, welcome.
If you will unmute. There you go.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, Mayor Victor Gordo and Pasadena City Council members. I want to say, abort, abort, abort the decision and push the kill switch on putting up those shot spotters. We heard Kat talk about, we've heard ACLU talk about how it will cause more damage to our Black and brown community. I know that I heard Chief Perez tell me at one time that law and policies and the ideas that you all come up with is damaging for Black and brown people. So again, here we go. We do not see the community being adhered to. We do not see you all making your decisions according to the community. I continue to hear so many things like the shot spotter, the RV, and I'm sure there's something on the agenda today that the community is going to express what they feel, and it seems like the city council and also Steve Mermel choose to do the exact opposite. So if the whole community calls in, which we've heard and listened to several times, the community will call and say, this is what the community wants. And then you guys will talk about it and somehow decide to do the complete opposite.
30
Just
seconds.
like you did with the shot spotter. So what we're asking for today is that you abort. And so the decision to put up the spot shotters, if you decide to, if the spot shotters, and if you continue with it, please let us know how, as Kat mentioned, we will be able to trace your racial profiling. And we already know that you guys need to fire the murdering officers that murdered Anthony McClain. We heard very clearly that Steve Mermel has disciplinary.
Ms. Hughes, your time has expired.
I'll call back during agenda number 15. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
Victor Hodson is not in the meeting, so we'll turn to Jasmine Richards Abdullah, followed by Adriana Batista.
Jasmine, welcome.
What's up, Mayor Gordo? I just want to continue by echoing to fire Edwin Dumagwindon, Officer Serrano, Officer Rosa, Officer Duncan, Officer Maroney. I find it highly important that we keep echoing and saying the names of these officers so you guys know that we know who we're talking about. And I also want to point out that the city attorney, she lied, and we want all of the footage from officer number 2, which is Officer Edwin Dumagwindon's footage, released. His body camera footage starts from when Anthony was murdered, not from the top of the hill when Anthony Lamont was initially pulled over. So she blatantly lied to city council. Also, we know that city council, as a governing body that hired Steve Mermel, can instruct him to have staff improve the policies and timelines regarding administrative and personnel review of officer-involved shootings. As Hampton stated, that review should not have to wait for the DA charges to start or finish. So you guys are hiding behind and playing like cat and mouse, but we know that you guys can agendize this, and you guys can agendize putting this on the agenda in regards to administrative and personnel review. Mermel, we know that I'm not going to even try to appeal to your moral compass because I know that you have one. I'm just going to continue echoing and saying, bye, Mermel. We can't wait for you to leave. We're going to have a party. And I hope you guys, when you guys implement the next
30 seconds.
manager, you implement and put someone in that actually is going to listen to you guys. Because we know that you guys vote this man in. So hopefully you guys use your moral compass and vote somebody in that is going to care about the city. And yeah, that's what I'll give up the rest of my time.
Thank you, Jasmine. Next.
We have Adriana Batista, and I think we'll have time probably for one more for Farin. Adriana? if you want to unmute. Adriana? There you go.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi, City Council.
go ahead, 2 minutes.
I would just like to update you all that in the Public Safety Committee meeting that took place on Wednesday, the agenda item to review the personnel policy regarding officer-involved shootings was spoken about, even though we've been asking for this to be taken up in City Council. I want to demand that this still be agendized in City Council, especially since all of City Council should be able to discuss this publicly because they do have the power, according to the Assistant City Attorney's PowerPoint instruction, that to instruct City Manager Mermel to review this policy and make the staff review these policies and rework these policies. So you do have that power. You all have the power to hire and fire Steve Mermel. And I want to say also Steve Mermel did say that he agrees that in cases such as what happened in Long Beach when Mona Rodriguez was shot and killed by a safety officer, there are cases that are so egregious that the officer should be fired immediately. But Mermel does not consider Anthony McLean's murder to be so egregious.
30
The
seconds.
residents of Pasadena disagree with you, Steve Mermel, and we still want you fired, not resigning. You need to be fired if you're not going to do your job and do what is right, which is firing this officer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Next.
Farron, followed by Evie.
Hi, Council. This is Sarah James. I was born and raised in Pasadena, California. I now live on the borderline of South Pasadena. Before I get started, I need everybody to understand that the city is indeed accountable to each and every person that visits, passes through, or spends time in Pasadena. And that I expect you to listen respectfully and attentively to those who take their time to express their concerns that impact them while in your community, just as you do others. I also wanted to call in today because I did not have the opportunity to make the quick turnaround to attend the public safety meeting where the discussion was diverted to regarding officer-involved shooting, investigations process, and related policies. I do want to also thank those that were able to call in last minute. I echo all of their comments and persistence for holding the city body accountable as they time after time tried to avoid accountability for the actionable steps that the city can take in response to police accountability. Leaning primarily on the city attorney's advice, advice that as if that is the end all be all. I do ask that the city council agendize the conversation for the city council. And I ask that the council also start preparing to do what's necessary to change the charter. I also want to say the city attorney will always act and make decisions in the interest of the city and the police department. Their job is to avoid any actions that may shed light into issues that result in the absolute need
30
of the
seconds.
city and police responsible. Instead, leaving the community with a body that we are assumed to and expected to work for us. That doesn't. People are paying attention now more than ever. And know it's still enough, not enough people calling in, but we will continue to amplify your silence and inactions and the fact that you are morally incapable of doing your job. Also, to move forward on the shot spotters program in the same communities that are suffering because of racial profiling, over policing, and cops that roam around as unchecked dogs further harms the Northwest community and is a total and complete sign of disregard.
Ms. Farron, your time has expired.
Everyone that has marched through the city, has called in, has emailed in support for racial justice. It's a slap in the face to everybody. Lastly, fire Edwin Dumegwinden and every other officer involved in the murder, cover-up, and planning of the evidence in the Anthony McLean case. This fight will not end, so get on the board or get out the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Evie, followed by Carolyn Galoni, followed by Michelle White. Those are the last three public comment speakers that we have in the queue. Evie, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. 2 minutes.
Good evening. We are demanding you agendize the firing of Edmund McWinden, Ryan Mulrooney, and Ryan Serrano. and we're demanding that you fire Steve Mermel for harassing a grieving community, for repeatedly taking down Anthony McLean's vigil, and for targeting freedom fighters Jasmine Richards, Saman McLean, Reggie Beasley, and Nafisa Kaba. You have all repeatedly lied to your constituents, and your lack of action regarding the murder of Anthony McLean is disgusting. You have the power to do something, to make a change, and to make a difference in a community that is constantly targeted. Yet you all sit here and make excuses and lie and continue to do nothing. We are done asking. We demand you do something. Come election times when you want our support, you best believe you won't have it. I yield my time.
Thank you. Carolyn Galoni, followed by Michelle White. Ms. Galoni, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes,
2 minutes.
Hi. Right. I wanted to reiterate what has been said week after week, person after person. Please agendize the firing of the McQuinnan, Officer Sereno, Officer Maroney, Officer Rosa, Officer Duncan. It's gotten to the point that I don't even know what your jobs are anymore. I feel like we don't even understand. I don't understand what your job is. And you sit there and you do nothing. Maybe you try and protect the wealth of the wealthy, but we're like, these are people of Pasadena. We are family members. Anthony McLean was a dad, a son, a brother, a friend, a human, a neighbor. He's your constituent. And I think it's your moral imperative to not only do something, but to make waves, to get out in the streets, to get out into the community and start doing something. Start asking your constituents. If you think nobody cares, which clearly people do because we're spending every single stinking Monday here and more. If you think no one cares, then get out there. You know what happened. You get out there and make people care. You do it because you know how wrong this was. You absolutely, the city council has the power to tell Steve Mermel
30 seconds.
Change the policies, improve the policies, change the timelines regarding administrative and personal leave, review the officer-involved shootings. Let's not wait for the DA. Hampton's right. We can't wait for DAs to start investigations or finish investigations. Our time's running out, and that's what this whole system was designed to do, to protect the people that work there, not to protect our communities. And our communities are going to fall apart if we don't know that the people who are supposed to represent us stand with us.
Your time has expired.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you. Michelle White.
Ms. White?
If you will unmute.
Ms. White?
Ms. White, if you could unmute your display on your Zoom meeting. Michelle? There we go. There we go. Thank you. Go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I am a senior living on a fixed income and therefore a member of the fastest growing number of persons in Pasadena at risk of becoming homeless. I'm also an African American resident of Northwest Pasadena and therefore a part of the growing number of persons at risk of becoming permanently displaced from Pasadena. I am also one of 70% of the African American Pasadena residents who are renters. I support the a change in the Pasadena charter that will allow for rent control and eviction protections for renters. In recent years, our rents have gone up 32%, which is higher than Los Angeles on average. We need a rent control provision that will limit our increases to 75% of the consumer price index, establish a rent board that will hear from both renters and landlords, an appeal of inequitable rents from their perspective, and establish a rent registry.
30 seconds.
We thank Councilman Masuda for his support of our proposal, and we seek all those who support getting rid of the displacement of Black and Brown residents to join the Pasadena Tenant Justice Coalition and secure signatures that are necessary to put this charter amendment on the November 2022 ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. We have speaker cards submitted by Alan Shea, Bubba Denham, Margaret Lee, Victor Hodgson, and Marcos Canales. And Marcos Canales has just entered the meeting, so that will be the last speaker for the initial 20 minutes. For all public comment, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Canales. Mr. Canales, if you can unmute your display.
Mr. Canales?
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
There we go.
2 minutes.
1, 2, 3, check.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Dear Mayor Gordo and City Council, my name is Marcos Canales, and I'm the pastor of La Fuente Ministries here in Pasadena. I've lived in Pasadena for 4 years, and I've been a pastor in the city for 8 years. I'm a constituent of District 1. We desperately need more affordable housing in Pasadena. Over the last 2 years, our church has experienced the move of at least 20 different individuals and their respective families. The high costs of rent and the lack of affordable housing, not to mention the inaccessibility to purchase a home, have led longtime Latino residents of this area to move as far away as Simi Valley. This has meant that we have lost key community leaders in our city, and those of us who remain are constantly being challenged by the rent, and we are constantly reconsidering how long can we sustain paying almost half of our income on rent. Recently, one of our church members told me, I love this city. I want to make Pasadena a community where everyone can live and thrive. It's a shame that because of my income, I can't see my children go to the same schools and programs that I went through in my childhood and adolescence. The decisions made on affordable housing in Pasadena have generational, emotional, and spiritual impact beyond what we can see. We need religious land rezoned for affordable housing. Planning Director David Reyes said that while Pasadena technically has the zoning to meet state-mandated affordable housing goals, we do not have the site.
20 seconds.
Rezoning churches would provide needed sites. A handful of churches across Pasadena are stepping up to offer their land for affordable housing, but most are either not zoned for housing at all or not zoned at a density to make a project feasible. We need a rezoning amendment for these churches, and it needs to be by right. If it is not by right, then single-family affluent neighborhoods can stop any multifamily affordable.
Mr. Canales, your time has expired.
The racist and classes zoning policies that have shaped Pasadena and many communities across the nation. Thank you so much.
Thank you
For your commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Canales. That completes public comment for tonight. And next, we'll move to the consent calendar. Before we start.
Mayor, I had just 2 questions just for the public commenters that commented. As far as the housing rezoning of church property, what is the month that we plan on having that back to the council?
Councilmember Hampton, my recollection is we said January back to the Planning Commission.
Back to the Planning Commission, January, okay. So then my other question would be, I think maybe to the mayor or city, well, definitely to the mayor, which is the policy discussion that we had at Public Safety. When will that become to the full council to have a discussion about it?
Yeah, we'll bring that forward. I'm not sure. I'll check with the city clerk and circle back with you, and we can add that to the.
Will it be before? Agenda. I guess my question is, will it be before the end of the year?
That's a good question. I don't know. We have to look at future agenda items. But if it's not before the end of the year, it'll be early into January.
Thank you. I guess as soon as we have some dates,
Okay.
we should be able to share that with
Yeah.
the public commenters. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, before we turn to the consent calendar, let me just announce that item 11 has been canceled and is removed from tonight's agenda. So anyone interested in item 11 should know that that matter has been canceled, I believe at the request of the applicant. And if it comes back, it'll be at a later agenda, but for now, it's canceled and removed from the agenda. Next, the consent calendar. Do we have public comment on any item? No public comment on any of the consent calendar items.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Consent calendar is moved by Ms. Williams. It's seconded by Vice Mayor Wilson.
I have a question on item 5, and it's only a question there.
Okay, so we'll amend the motion with the consent of the maker and the seconder to exclude item 5.
Sorry. And number 4, please.
4 and 5, okay. The remainder of the consent calendar is moved. And roll call?
To approve all consent items except for items 4 and 5, Councilmember Hampton,
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Yes?
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Mayor, I'd like,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes. Mr. Kennedy,
Mayor, I'd like to move.
item 4.
Mayor, before we get to item 4, I'd like to move item 5. That was an error. I'm looking at pagination incorrectly. I meant to say item 4.
Okay.
Move item 5, please.
Well, let's just jump right into 4 and then we can move them together.
Okay, thank you. My question on 4 was, are we doing any outreach specifically for Pasadena-based businesses that can provide the concrete necessary to do the sidewalk repair? Historically, we had MASH and MASH employees doing lots of the concrete work that's contemplated. And we also had a training program that seemed to meet with some success. The objective was not to necessarily have continual employment for the extra employees, but to give them a skill set that was marketable, that made them more marketable. So I'd just like to know, for the contractor, the winning bid, CJ Concrete, are they doing outreach to the local community for employment and training?
Thank you. Let's start with the outreach that was done for the contract. I asked about that, and it sounds like we did do outreach. We had seven bidders, is my understanding, but Ms. Mark Carrion has joined us in the chambers. Mr. City Manager, a couple of questions there for Mr. Kennedy. One involving outreach, the other involving training and MASH opportunities.
Right. Councilmember Kennedy, while you were asking your questions, Chris Markarian, Hayden Melbourne, Yanni Wu stepped in from the Public Works Department. Let me restate what I believe your questions were and then ask them to respond. You had asked about what outreach the low bidder may be doing to source the actual concrete from any local suppliers. And then you also asked about training programs that the city, does the contractor undertake any outreach in terms of hiring? And if I picked up on your questions, you also asked about efforts that we've used for sidewalk work, where we've used MASH programs to provide trainings to people as well. Did I get your questions about right?
I think that's the gist of it. If staff hits all 3 of those, we'll be good.
Okay, let me turn to Chris Markarian, our interim Public Works Director, for a response.
And I have follow-up questions as well, because I'm the one who pulled this.
Sorry about that, Councilmember.
Oh, no, it's totally fine.
All right, look, good afternoon, Chris Markarian here. With regards to the sidewalk concrete contract award to CJ Concrete Construction, that bid was advertised in several of the publications. We did reach out to all of the local contractors who are listed with our finance department, our purchasing, under this specific trade, and we reached out to them. In the report, we do discuss the number of contractors who obtained the bid packets and the local contractors that had been we had been in contact with. There were 2 local contractors who also attended the pre-bid meeting, and they're very much aware of the scope of the project, and with the result that we did receive 1 low bidder. Unfortunately, they did not have the proper licensing, nor submitted the required bid bond and the required forms. But aside from that, with regards to our award recommendation to CJ, the contractor has indicated that with this award of this result, he would not have any new hires. These contractors, because of the extensive amount of the concrete work, it's a single discipline of work. They have in-house crews that do the work. But if there are any need for new hires, our specifications do require that they outreach to the local community. And in terms of sourcing the material, that is something that we could speak to them. As of course, this is all competitively bid, and they do look at the bid pricing is what determines the vendors and the suppliers that they would be using. With regards to CDBG, with regards to MASH staff that we use, they are specifically employed by our street maintenance. They are part of our crews that do all of the sidewalk repair work in the CDBG eligible areas of our city. We do have $500,000 that was appropriated by council for this fiscal year, and we continue this project now for several fiscal years, and we have had MASH employees whom we've hired on as permanent employees, so it has been a very successful program. If I missed anything.
Thank you. I think you hit all the themes. Mr. Hampton, followed by Mr. Basuda. Mr. Hampton?
My question was, it relates to how did we do the outreach to Pasadena residents? Did someone actually pick up a phone, or do we only rely on the list that we already have access to through the finance department?
So all of our projects are bid through Planet Bids, and it does automatically generate notices to the contractors based on specific type of work that they perform. However, we as well go through the business license list that we have. That is the extra effort we put in, and we specifically email those contractors who have a Pasadena license as well to make sure that we have a comprehensive list of outreach.
Thank you. There are a lot of, there are hundreds and hundreds of construction companies in the city of Pasadena. How many of them are actually on our list? So how many emails went out to just Pasadena-based construction companies?
So majority of the, I think with the concrete, I've noticed looking at the concrete companies, majority of them are Class B license. That means they do have a building license. In this case, because this is a single trade contract, a general a B license contractor per the Business and Professions Code is not eligible. They cannot bid on this project. The only way a B contractor can do that is by providing a subcontractor that's a C8. So for that reason, I think a lot of these concrete contractors may not be interested, or when we do reach out to them, they're not looking to respond.
In
I think it
total,
would be, I
Councilmember,
think it would be helpful if,
I think you're about to get an answer.
well, Councilmember, I was going to say, as indicated in the staff report, a total of 2,096 notifications went out, 118 of which were local.
oh, perfect. Thank you so much. I did see that in the report, so I appreciate that. I think that Ms. Markarian had mentioned in her comments about if a B contractor actually subcontracted with a C contractor, there is a potential for a local to be able to do some of this work. So I think maybe our requirements, because I think it's interesting, and I'm just asking the question because as a homeowner, I can hire a general contractor to install my sidewalk. But it's interesting that the city is saying that we're not going to do the same. And these are the same sidewalks in front of my house. And the same PSI, I believe, is probably the same PSI rating for the majority of our sidewalks. So I just find it hard to understand that we could lift on our requirements so that we can engage more local participation. It's not some mandate from a pot, is it?
It's a government code provision is my understanding, so it's the state.
I get that. No. I'm asking the city staff to respond to that, because if it's a government code, then why can you hire a general contractor to replace the sidewalks in front of your home? That would be incorrect.
Councilmember Hampton, we do ask for a Class A license for any work within the public right-of-way, as far as permitted work within the public right-of-way,
So
which is the same requirement for this sidewalk contract.
So we don't allow a general contract.
We do not allow a building contractor to bid.
So the government code applies in both situations.
Correct.
I would like to have more discussion about this at a different date, because I think that's, I've seen plenty of general contractors doing concrete work in front of residents' homes in Pasadena after they pulled a permit with our department. So maybe you're saying that the residents are all doing this completely wrong, but it's signed off by public works staff at the end. I haven't heard of any public works staff asking for Class A. Look, the sidewalk in front of my house is I'm just gonna be, no one asked me for a Class A license.
Yeah, all of the permits that we issue, we require a Class A, and that is what they submit before permit issuance.
Well, it was signed off by your team.
Why don't we?
Before I was elected. So I think this is a very interesting conversation, but what I'm trying to get at is that there are ways that we could get more, and this is a global conversation with the council now, there are ways that we could get more local participation on these projects. If we go by the spirit and not just the letter of the law, we can figure out a way to get more local participation. And so I just want to bring this up because I just thought this was a great example of
Mr.
Even if it was broken up, because our city, our city knows exactly the areas of sidewalks where we're going to be making these repairs. You could have even broken up the contract to say, we're going to have a contractor or even our match team just do the demo. And now the other contractors coming in to do the pouring and everything else. And that's a possibility.
Okay, Mr. Hampton, thank you. We'll ask staff to circulate the state regulations, and maybe this is a matter for EdTech to discuss. Mr. Masuda?
I'll move 4 and 5, Mayor.
I think Mr. Masuda was in the queue.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate what Mr. Hampton said, and I know what Mr. Kennedy would say, because it wasn't that long ago that we were complaining a lot about sidewalk repair. Remember, John? Really often. So I really appreciate the fact that we're putting in every year $1 million. And is Steve Mermel, is that the amount, $1 million about every year?
That's what we were able to do this year. In better years, we were up to 2 million. We're back to about 1 million, and hopefully we can continue to do that.
Well, personally, I really appreciate that. I don't hear a lot of complaining about sidewalk repairs anymore, a little bit, but I think when we started that pilot program, it seemed to, the complaining seemed to go away, and from my perspective, I'm really pleased about that. Thank you very much.
I'll copy you on my emails, Mr. Masuda, if you're looking for more. Next, so it's been moved. Is there a second for items 4 and 5?
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. Seconded, moved by Mr. Kennedy, seconded
by Mr. Wilson.
By Mr. Wilson. Okay, roll call.
To approve staff recommendations for items 4 and 5, Councilmember Hampton?
I'm not sure of what item 5 is, but I'm voting no on number 4.
You're voting no on number 4?
So let's separate them. This motion will go to item
4.
Thank you.
So just the staff recommendation for item 4. Mr. Hampton?
That's $1 million of dollars that could be held here locally, so I vote no.
No. Councilmember Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Gordo?
Yes.
The motion is approved, 7 in favor, 1 against.
Item 5.
Move item 5.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Williams and Mr. Masuda. Roll call.
To approve staff recommendation for item number 5, Councilmember Hampton?
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Gordo?
Yes.
The motion is
Point of
approved
clarification,
without
Mayor.
opposition.
Mr. Kennedy?
Did you say that the matter that Councilmember Hampton had raised related to sidewalks would go to EdTech for further discussion to see how we could, in fact, possibly within the rules, have Pasadena-based companies more competitive in possibly receiving these types of contracts?
Well,
this type of contract.
we've had these conversations at EdTech previously, but what I'll do is I'll ask the city manager to send around the regulations with the cover memo, and then Mr. Hampton, who's the chair of EdTech, can make a determination whether we need to bring that matter back to EdTech. It's probably appeared there 3 or 4 times.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to item 11. And as I said, this matter's been pulled from the agenda, canceled. And so we'll keep moving to item 12. And this is a public hearing. Mr. Clerk?
So for item 11, that was canceled by consensus. For item 12, this is the time and place for the public hearing on appeal of Board of Zoning Appeals decision on Hillside Development Permit number 6838 regarding the property located at 820 Linda Vista Avenue. The city clerk's office sent out notices, public hearing notices. 34 notices were mailed, 34 notices were posted. Both occurred on October 4th, 2021. The city clerk's office received one letter in support of the staff recommendation to overturn the Board of Zoning Appeals decision and approve Hillside Development Permit HDP number 6838, noting that all the requisite findings for the HDP can be made, and none of the issues that prompted the BOZA to disprove the HDP remain. One letter and along with other correspondence and a video were received in opposition to the proposed project, requesting that the City Council uphold the decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals and reject HDP number 6838, expressing concern with the applicant now seeking the City Council's approval of a different and even more troubling project and the lack of public noticing and input on the proposed new project. Staff is now recommending that the matter be remanded to the Board of Zoning Appeals for consideration. The City Clerk's Office received 2 letters supporting the recommendation to remand back to BOZA, and 1 letter stating that proper protocol is to have the City Council render an opinion on the original project rejected at the BOZA hearing at tonight's hearing. All the correspondence was received, posted online, and distributed to the City Council as part of the public hearing record.
So my understanding is that, Mr. Madison?
Just a point of order, and this doesn't happen very often, but I think that the clerk made an error, and when he said 820 Linda Vista, I believe it's 1820.
Yeah.
And if I misheard, I apologize.
No,
it is 1820.
It is 1820. Thank you for catching my error. I appreciate that.
Gold star for Mr.
20
Madison.
years, I just got the first time with our distinguished clerk, so I'm going to remember this date. So.
Appreciate that.
So, Mr. Madison keeps us honest. The record will reflect that, and my understanding is that this matter is being remanded, and the applicant has consented to the remand to BOZA. Is that correct, Mr. Reyes?
That's correct, Mayor.
And so the reason for going through the opening of the public hearing was to comply with the due process rules, but the matter is being remanded, and so I'll read into the record. Oh, we're asking the council to remand it. I apologize. So we're asking the council to remand the matter.
You need a motion, Mayor?
We do.
So should I first move to close the public hearing?
Do we need to close the public hearing, or? Okay, we have one public comment. We'll take the public comment and then take the motion. I would say, since the matter is being remanded back to, it sounds like the matter may be remanded back to public, to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We'll wait and make the determination after listening to public comment, but I would encourage those members of the public who wish to comment tonight to save those comments and make them in front of the BZA. I believe we have contact information for everyone who wants to comment tonight, and we will be sure to let the BZA consider this item and let the members of the public know when the matter is scheduled before BZA. So with that encouragement, you are still allowed to make comments this evening if you wish, but again, your comments are best heard at BZA. With that, let's turn to the city clerk.
The one speaker that's left to speak on this item that's a member of the public is Anthony Manusos. So I would say to Anthony, if you want to make your comments, you can. Otherwise, you could hold your comments and make them at the Board of Zoning Appeals. Press *6 to unmute, Mr. Manusos.
I'll hold my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Manusos.
The only other speaker card we have is Nina Chomsky, but I believe she's not going to speak. I think she submitted a letter that she supports the matter being remanded back to BOZA.
Okay, so we'll now entertain a motion. Mr. Madison.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved, motion to close the public hearing. Roll call?
To close the public hearing, Councilmember Hampton,
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
Public hearing is closed.
On the merits?
I'd move, Mayor, to remand the matter to Boza with gratitude to the staff for all their work and also obviously to Boza as well.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to remand the matter of 1820 Linda Vista to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Roll call?
Councilmember Hampton,
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
The motion is approved without opposition to remand the matter back to Boza.
So that matter is remanded. Next, we'll turn to item 13, old business. This is consideration of direction related to gas-powered leaf blowing machines. And I'll turn to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we have a PowerPoint presentation that's coming up. The staff gives me this one. That's why it's on there. Very good. Okay. We're here tonight to ask the city council to consider providing direction to staff regarding gas-powered leaf blower machines. The issue of gas-powered landscape equipment has been an issue of concern for a number of years. People are concerned primarily about noise pollution. We heard that particularly from people during the Safer at Home orders when more people were working from home. There's also concerns about air pollution. This equipment uses two-stroke engines, which tend to be fairly dirty and pollute quite a bit, as do other lawn equipment, but again, focusing mostly on leaf blowers this evening. And as I mentioned, the Safer at Home, as more people are home, they were concerned about the impacts of leaf blowers. We do regulate leaf blowers under the municipal code. They cannot be used within 500 feet of residential area before 8 in the morning or after 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, between 9 and 5 on a Saturday, never on Sunday. No more than one leaf blower can be used per property at any one time. This is a challenging regulation in that determining what is one property, what is one parcel is from time to time difficult from an enforcement point of view. Leaf blowers cannot be used for more than 15 minutes per hour on a parcel less than half an acre or for a half hour on a parcel greater than a half an acre. Our public health department conducts an annual certification of leaf blowers. Our code compliance staff enforces our regulations. The table on the chart shows for the last several years the types of complaints that we see. As you can see, the majority of complaints, 77%, relate to people using leaf blowers usually too early in the morning. And then about 14% of the complaints are people running them too long. About 6% of the complaints are the noise. And then the balance are people blowing, probably from next door neighbors, where people are blowing leaves across the property line. And these reflect the complaints that we receive. They don't necessarily indicate that these were all violations, but it just gives you a sense of what the complaints are. And again, I think from a common sense point of view, people understand that most of the complaints are the noise early morning, being woken up by someone using a leaf blower before the time that they're allowed to do it. In February this year, the Environmental Advisory Commission, after reviewing the issue of leaf blowers, prepared a memorandum that was sent to The city council, it had a series of recommendations in it. They pulled together a synopsis of the history of our regulations and a variety of material, compilation, if you will. They suggested that the city conduct some type of polling to identify the problem, whether it's noise, air pollution, greenhouse gas emissions. I think the prior chart gives an indication of what most of the complaints are, but increasingly there's greater concern over the air pollution impacts of two-stroke engines and how much they can truly pollute to greenhouse gas emissions. Also, they suggested looking at public health records pertaining to enforcement. As you'll see in a minute, the Public Health Department has looked at this issue before. They also suggested contacting other cities to see what regulations they have in effect, and then doing outreach with the landscaping community and creating an education campaign. The Public Safety Committee, which receives reports not just about fire, police, but also from our health department, because we define public health as part of the public safety mission, has prepared reports previously. The last time we brought this forward a number of years ago, staff had recommended no changes in our current set of regulations, but a couple of things have changed, which have brought us to at least asking the question of the council, should we do something a little bit different? One, the technology around electric leaf blowers has gotten much better to the point that they rival the gas engines. So they're efficient, effective, they have pretty decent battery life. And also, again, as I mentioned a moment ago, greater concern about the impact on climate change. And as I noted, as it says on the slide here, we had moved enforcement over from the health department to code enforcement, and that's been pretty effective. Earlier this year, Assembly Bill 1346, air pollution, small off-road engines. It was directed at these two-stroke engines. Under this Assembly Bill, which was signed by the governor recently, it requires the California Air Resources Board, or CARB as they're called, to develop and adopt regulations to prohibit the sale, but not the use, only the sale of small gas-powered engines, such as those that are frequently found in lawn and garden equipment. The prohibition on the sale will go into effect as soon as CARB has promulgated the regulations. It's anticipated that this may be done as soon as 2024. But again, as I mentioned, that is only to the sale. It does not ban the use. In August of this year, the city of South Pasadena voted to prohibit gas-powered leaf blowers citywide. It applies to the city's own properties as well. It includes financial penalties that apply to the property owner as opposed to the gardener, the property owner of the property where a gas-powered leaf blower would be using, and it set a maximum sound level. And as part of the outreach in South Pass, they established a webpage, did social media, city newsletters, door hangers, direct mailing, the typical things that a city would do when implementing this sort of regulation. And so our purpose tonight, and with me is David Sinclair and David Reyes from the Planning Department, who assisted in pulling all this together. We're asking the City Council to consider whether we should revisit this issue, and if so, there's a number of actions the council could take. It could direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance amending the municipal code to ban the use of gas-powered leaf blowers, similar to what South Pasadena and most notably some other beach cities have done. It could refer the matter back to the Public Safety Committee for further consideration. It could provide other direction to the staff or take no action. And so I don't have the Public Health Department here this evening because we weren't intending to do a deep dive on any particular health effects. We really wanted to just speak to the council to see if there was an appetite to pursue any of these or other actions. With that, I'll pause my presentation there and see what the pleasure of the council is.
Mr. Clerk, do we have public comment?
We do have public comment on this item. I think we have two speakers, but the city clerk's office received 54 letters, one of which was signed by 8 community-based organizations expressing concerns, providing suggestions, and stating support for an ordinance prohibiting the use of gas-powered leaf-blowing machines within Pasadena. One letter received urging the city council to vote no on the proposed ban. So the 55 letters, or 54 letters rather, were posted online, distributed to the council, and are part of the record for this item. And we do have, as I said, 2 public comment speakers on this item.
For questions first, and I'll turn to my colleagues. I see Mr. Masuda and Mr. Madison and Mr. Wilson in the queue. Mr. Masuda?
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, many years ago, when you were chair of EdTech, this came to EdTech, and we had a long discussion about it, and I think a couple meetings on it, and we decided to take no action. It was very complex then. I think what really changed it is what the city manager said, is that now technology with the electric blowers, it's a new world. I actually bought one, and yes, when we were discussing it back years ago, noise and the air pollution was right there on top of as concerns. I'm really open to making a decision. I'm going to listen to my colleagues, but I just want you to know is that maybe around 15 years ago, I lost a gardener from cancer, and his name was Tony, and that's always on my mind. In fact, my wife mentioned it to me when I told her that this item is coming to the council and we're going to discuss it. And I did say to her, and I promised her that I would mention the fact that Tony passed away from cancer, and that would be on my mind when I vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Masuda. Mr. Madison, followed by Vice Mayor Wilson.
Thanks, Mayor. I guess one issue that is called out in the staff report is the state has recently adopted legislation prohibiting, I think, the sale of all gas-powered leaf blowers by a date certain. And I just wonder what staff's reaction is. Obviously, that's not as far-reaching as a ban on use, but is there a case to be made that we should simply see how the state legislation has an impact, and then maybe revisit this in some period of time?
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Yes, as I pointed out, the new law will require, once the Air Resources Board promulgates the rules, that the sale of this type of equipment, gas-powered, won't be allowed. I was speaking to the mayor earlier today, and in my mind, it conjured up pictures of what we see from Cuba, where people are driving cars from 1950 around Havana because they keep repairing them to keep them going. I don't know what the effect would be. Certainly, the council could defer some action to see what would happen. That's certainly an option available to you. I suspect, though, that a lot of gardeners will just continue to use their old equipment until it's just not usable anymore. The mayor was thinking about going into the secondary market for parts and equipment. So that certainly is an option, but some of this equipment can operate for a long time. So if on the greenhouse gas concern, if the city wanted to take more of a leadership role there, that would lend itself towards phasing out the 2-stroke engines.
That would certainly be my preference. Have we done any real analysis of what the difference in the carbon footprint would be? Because switching from gas to electricity does have an effect, but it's not a complete elimination of the footprint, right? I mean, the electricity leaves a footprint too, and we're trying to conserve electricity. possibly during some of the hours, if not all, that gardeners also work.
Right, that we
Yeah.
haven't done that analysis. If the council wanted us, again, the point of tonight's discussion is to get some direction. If you wanted some supplemental information to help with the decision-making process, we could certainly do that. We would love to see sales of our electric utility increase. But we could do a comparative or see what data is out there in a comparative, because you're right, nothing is carbon impact free.
And then my last question is just, are there any programs available for the state? Because many of these landscapers, I don't know if this was the case of the gentleman that Gene mentioned or not, but many of them are small businesses. And, it's a capital investment. And are there any programs that the state offers, or could our utility offer some assistance financially with replacing the equipment that were outlined, if that's what we end up doing?
Southern California Air Quality District has historically offered rebates, and we've helped publicize those through our utility. And again, if additional information was requested, I would certainly contact them to find out more information about those programs, but they do offer them fairly frequently.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, Vice Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly, I know, like my colleagues, my office has received a regular litany of complaints. Our current ordinance does not prevent these leaf blowers from operating on holidays, and our community, who tends to be our lawn care folks, are pretty resourceful and work when they can. So it can be a real nuisance to the residents in terms of your Christmas or Christmas Eve being disrupted, or whatever your holiday is. I do remember, like Councilmember Masuda, this coming before, and I guess maybe it was EdTech. I thought it was MSC, but maybe it was EdTech. No, it's supposed to be the purview of public safety. I've been told whoever looked at it before needs to look at it again. So I do think it would be public safety that would need to look at this more closely. I am supportive of readdressing or taking a closer look at this for the reasons around certainly our commitment to our greenhouse gas and climate action plan. This is important, not just from a noise standpoint, but I remember one of the issues being two things. We had CARB there, I believe, or AQMD. The expense of these units was very high. And many of these operators are small business folks. I would ask, if this comes back, which I think it should, is that we have better visibility in terms of the hardship it could create for small business owners who probably aren't making a huge amount of money running their lawn care businesses. I just think it's a consideration, and maybe there's, as Steve mentioned, maybe there's some grant funding or some microloans that would be available for them to make the transition. I suspect, like most electric equipment, the cost of these units has come down, but I remember it being very expensive before to have a commercial grade blower that was battery powered, but that was 5 years ago. So I think, Steve, that would be worth looking at what the cost impacts would be for these small business owners, and what we could mitigate in terms of what options would be available for purchase. Related was how long the battery packs could last. If you're running a lawn service, you're probably doing, 8 or 10 lawns, and if your battery power doesn't last, then it's not really a viable solution. So I'm hoping that the technology, the price of that technology has evolved, and I think it's an important consideration for the small business owner who tends to operate a lot of these local lawn services. But very much appreciate the need, and think we absolutely should move forward in trying to make this transition as soon as practical. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Wilson. Ms. Rivas, followed by Mr. Kennedy.
Actually, I think Mr. Kennedy was before me.
Oh, was he? Okay. Mr. Kennedy?
Please go ahead, Ms. Rivas. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. I just had one question. Do we have any data or lessons learned from other jurisdictions that have made similar moves to banning the use of gas leaf blowers? I know South Pasadena is very recent, but you mentioned there were a number of other cities or jurisdictions that have done it.
I don't. We could certainly do that. Again, if council directs that we do a little more staff work on this, we would. It's a number of beach cities were some of the earlier adopters, and so we could certainly make those contacts to see if there was some unknowns they hadn't thought of before they did it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rivas. Mr. Kennedy?
I'm really appreciative of the comment, questions, line of concerns and questions from Councilmember Madison and Councilmember Wilson. I would only add that staff identify non-taxpayer dollars where we could truly have a program where the business owner could turn in their gas-powered leaf blower to the city for destruction, and we would provide them some kind of, I don't know if rebate is the right word, but a portion of the cost of finding or acquiring, purchasing the leaf blower with the least amount of decibel level noise and the least amount of carbon footprint, and with the longest life in terms of the lithium battery or whatever the type of battery. I think we owe that to the class of operators that we would be negatively impacting. And I think we could do that in a way where it doesn't negatively impact our budget, so long as we find the money from funds that are not taxpayer dollars. I think the funds exist, and we need to look far, high, and wide to find those resources. And we need just a little bit more work on what is the state of the art in terms of leaf blowers. And as it relates to doing so, I think Councilmember Rivas's question is right on point as well. So I think we can get there, and I think we're smart to be moving in the direction of eliminating gas-powered leaf blowers in the city of Pasadena. We need a little bit more information and a little bit more money. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, let me work with the staff. You know, this matter is one that's been raised on and off for a number of years, as has been stated. Recently, Mr. Madison and I attended the California Terrace Neighborhood Association, and a couple of residents raised this matter with me, and I agree with how they suggested we address it. One way that we address, for example, refrigerators that are dated, is to provide assistance in replacement, and that's what I'm hearing from my colleagues. The low-flow toilets is another example. I think this issue is prime for working with a foundation, for example, the Pasadena Community Foundation, where we could try and do some sort of fundraising, and I think residents will respond well. That, together with any grant dollars that we're able to attract, could lead us in the direction of a replacement program in Pasadena. And, you know, that combined with an ordinance on banning the use, I think would serve us well. And so I'll work with the city staff, talk to residents, and I would encourage all of you to do the same. And maybe we can bring the matter through Public Safety Committee back to the city.
I thought we were asking questions at this point.
Oh.
Are we doing deliberations or questions?
Well, I didn't see anyone else in the queue.
Oh, because I don't know, I guess the question, I thought it was questions, that's why I
Yeah.
haven't been saying anything.
Okay.
I was following the rules.
Yeah, no, I didn't see you in the queue, Ms. Williams. I'm sorry. Were you in the queue?
No, I don't have any questions.
Oh, okay.
Because I think we should hear public comment and then we should deliberate and say how we feel about it. Thanks.
So let's go ahead and go to public comment, but I do think, how many public commenters do we have?
We have 3 right now.
3? Okay.
Maybe 4, sorry. I keep on missing people. We have 4.
4. Okay, so I think we should go to public comment, as has been suggested, and then we'll come back.
Great. Jill Shook, followed by Cheryl Arger, followed by Una Lee Yost, followed by Wes Ruderman. Jill, we have two of, there you go. We have two of you, so there we go. Are you able to make comment?
Yes.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just really glad that you have put the ban on the sale of the leaf blowers, but I have to admit, I wish it was also banning leaf blowers, as you've been discussing. Obviously, you've already shared how noisy it is, but it can really cause some hearing loss. I so appreciate what Masuda's saying about cancer. You know, the research shows that it could be 300 times more pollutant than even a pickup truck, which is so astounding to me. But our gardeners are really not happy when we talk to them about electric blowers, but I care about their health as well. And so we really need to put life over profit, but I appreciate what Kennedy is saying about trying to find a program where we can really help them and not hurt them financially. I was on the city sidewalk last week by the city hall, and there was a leaf blower there that, and I asked him if it was gas, and he said yes. You know, and I thought, well, touche, we have gas at our house too, and we've been trying to work with him on other options. But he kind of didn't see me coming and pushed all this dust and leaves into my face, and he felt really bad. But I just think, you know, we can avoid that and figure out how to pay people a little more, maybe even go back to raking. And so I know that sounds really old fashioned, but I feel like there may be some options even besides just leaf blowers and some kind of rewarding people for complete dealing with very low tech. So help us to help our neighbors and to get this done and to create an amended ordinance to actually outlaw the gas powered leaf blowers. And I like how compassionate you are in your discussion about it. Thank you.
Thank you. We will bring in Cheryl Arger, followed by Una Lee Yost, followed by Wes Ruderman. Ms. Arger, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yes, I actually also appreciate the comments that have been made by all of the council members and the mayor. I am glad that it seems like we're going to address this issue sooner rather than later, although I believe it was Steve, my council member, Steve Madison, that suggested potentially waiting for the state regulation to come through. I think one of the things that's important to potentially legislate is only blowing hard surfaces, not organic surfaces and like leaves and grass and yards and those types of things, because they do disrupt natural habitats. And we really need to be increasing our ground soil along with getting healthier soils, along with healthier microbes and smaller insects for our whole entire ecosystem. There's been a discussion about, are there programs available? If you go to South Coast AQMD's website right now, they do have a trade-in program that will rebate up to 75% of the cost of the replacement battery for electric lawn and garden equipment previously funded. And I know that the legislation, AB 1346, that's been that just came into law, was approved by the governor. They're directing the state board to implement strategies to achieve 100% zero emissions. So we will start seeing that legislation be developed next year, along with additional incentives to start replacing these small engines, combustion engines. So I think that we should be gearing up for that January 1st legislation and replacement in Pasadena as well. And more strikingly, because in SCE's report that just came out 2 weeks ago, they stated that the state is going to fail meeting their 2030 climate goals. And when you look at the charts, it's quite frightening to see how much we need to do so quickly
30 seconds.
in order to manage the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Una Lee Jost, followed by Wes Ruderman, followed by Anthony Manousos. All right, we'll go to Una Lee Jost. Ms. Jost, can you unmute? Una Lee, can you unmute your display? There you go. Are you there? Hello? We can't hear you.
Well, let's go to the next speaker.
We'll go to Wes Ruderman and maybe try and bring you back in. Wes, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Wes Ruderman speaking as a resident of the city this evening. First and foremost, a big thank you for agendizing this item tonight. I wanted to respond quickly to some of the points that Council Members Kennedy and Madison had raised. South Coast AQMD actually has an existing, very successful program that provides a 75% rebate on the cost of commercial grade zero emission yard equipment. And that's specifically for businesses, cities, school districts, and nonprofit organizations. And to get that 75% off, they have to trade in. So it's kind of a one-to-one exchange. You trade in an old gas blower, you get a new zero emission model that you can select on your own. The program has almost exhausted its funds, but the recently adopted California state budget includes a $30 million set aside specifically to support the transition to zero emission yard equipment technology. And that new funding is something that AQMD, our district, is already going to go after to supplement the existing program that they have. And that's something that our local director, Michael Cacciati of South Pasadena, is already working on with staff. Somewhat related, on November 6th, the city of South Pasadena will be hosting a special zero emission yard equipment demonstration event at Garfield Park from 10 to 2. And it's really geared towards commercial operators, members of the public, anyone who wants to try this equipment out firsthand. So I would encourage staff and even council to check out the event to see some of these things and some of the technology that's already available. AQMD also has a new program where public agencies such as cities can request a trailer full of zero emission yard equipment to demo for their own operations at no charge. And you simply have to request that, something we've worked with a few communities and school districts to apply for in the coming months. In closing, I just wanted to highlight, as many of you know, Pasadena really became a leader statewide in creating smoke-free public places about a decade ago. And at that time, a lot of those local ordinances were very hotly discussed and debated, much more so than this is so far. However, the council really showed leadership in moving forward and creating smoke-free parks, outdoor dining, bars, even multi-unit housing. And I think that's something, 10 years down the road that we just take for granted now in Pasadena. And this issue feels very similar, at least to me. It's an opportunity for you to act on very significant clean air, local climate, environmental, and public health issues. And it's also something that now is frankly easier than ever. The technology is shared is
15
really
seconds.
Batteries are becoming more powerful and affordable every year. So I really hope you'll move the issue forward this evening. And I encourage the city also to lead by example by adopting some of this new technology for your own operations. Thanks.
Okay, we can bring in Anthony Manousos. And Anthony, you're speaking on 13, and you also have a carded for 14 as well. So,
All right, can you hear me?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I am really thrilled to hear that the city council is considering banning gas-powered leaf blowers. We know this is definitely feasible since over 100 cities have banned or restricted motorized leaf blowers, including South Pasadena. I'm glad to hear that council member Masuda has bought an electric leaf blower. Joe and I bought one. It wasn't very expensive. It was less than $100. Joe is right that our gardeners are excited about using electric leaf blowers, but they do so when we ask them, and it doesn't take them any more time to do the job. We power our electric leaf blowers with electricity from our solar panels. I don't think it would be prohibitively expensive to require electric leaf blowers, which are much quieter and much less polluting than motorized ones. And I really like the suggestion of council members Kennedy and Wilson to help subsidize gardeners to mitigate the cost of transitioning to electric blowers. And I'm glad to hear that the council is open to banning motorized leaf blowers from our city, and thank you for taking this proposal seriously. It will make a huge difference in the quality of life for all of us here in Pasadena.
Thank you. We'll bring back in Una Lee Jost. Are you able to unmute and speak?
Hi, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, great. Thank you much. So yes, greetings. I'm Una Lee Jost, longtime resident of Pasadena District 4, local school advocate and POC parent. And thanks for the opportunity to provide public comment on agenda item number 13. And I just want to note that with increasing severity of wildfires, droughts, and other consequences impacting society and ecosystems, the environment and climate change is a key concern for many POC students and families. And the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change IPCC report released August 9 concluded the climate situation is even more dire than projected earlier, and that some trends are now irreversible. So unless there are immediate, rapid, and large-scale reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, limiting warming to even 2 degrees Celsius will be beyond reach. However, the recent IPCC report does show that human actions still have potential to determine the future course of climate, and that stabilizing the climate will require strong, rapid, and sustained reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and reaching net zero carbon dioxide emissions. So in light of the dire climate situation, I do urge the council, for the sake of PhD students and future generations, including my son, to utilize all resources at your disposal to follow the IPCC recommendations, including amending our municipal code to ban the use of gas-powered leaf blowing machines, a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions. And frankly, I was very troubled to learn that according to the California Air Resources Board, a commercial gas-powered leaf blower emits the same pollutants as a 2016 Toyota Camry on an 1,100-mile drive, approximately a distance from LA to Denver, and that leaf blowers and other small engines are the #1 source of air pollution in California as of 2020. I understand that over 200 cities, including South Pasadena and Claremont, have already adopted measures banning or restricting the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. And so for the sake of the climate and health of POC children and future generations, I do urge the council to do likewise and immediately ban the use of gas-powered leaf blowing machines to help achieve the urgent goal of net zero carbon dioxide emissions. Also, I do urge the council to create a fund to help lawn and garden equipment operators purchase comparable sustainable alternatives, such as those recommended on the sustainableprinceton.org site,
30
as well as
seconds.
consideration of South Pasadena's commercial electric lawn and garden equipment incentive and exchange program. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes public comment on this item.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. You've waited long for this matter, so it's here.
Right when I request, how did you know? Thank you, and I wore my leaf shirt today for this reason, and I don't want to wear it again in the next couple weeks. So I think that we have analyzed this to death over the past few years. I think that the public, what was really kind of amazing about the public's input is it was very technical and very specific, which we usually don't get because we have a lot of experts in this city from Caltech, from the Audubon Society, from our local environmentalists that have a lot of information on this. And I think our Environmental Commission has also done a lot of work on this. So that's why I really push to bring this to City Council, because I think the timing is ripe with the state legislation. And I really would encourage us to take action today to have the staff come back with what an ordinance would look like. And we could sort of address the main issues that have been brought up today by doing that. So a staff report that answers some of the questions that I think have been brought by the other members of the City Council. But the South Pasadena ordinance, I think, is a really great model for how we could do ours. It would also create some geographic consistency. And an ordinance that the staff could bring back could look at limiting the use of phasing out the use of gas-powered blowers by a certain date. So South Pasadena had October of next year. We could look at a later date. Doing the education and the seminars and the sampling, all of that, I think would be helpful to the public. Making them aware of the enormous amount of funding. Thank you, Wes, for bringing that up. For the replacement equipment, those rebates have been around. I got my electric mower 10 years ago with an AQMD rebate. So those rebates have been around for a very long time, but people don't use them because, quite frankly, they're not forced to do it. So I think we do need to take another step to really push the public to adopt these new technologies that the rebates are available for. I support the public's recommendation to further limit even electric blowers so that they are only used on walkways. And that does two things. One, you are not bringing up dirt and debris and, quite frankly, animal feces and other things from bushes and grass and dirt, things that should not be in the air that we're breathing, that we are bringing up by blowing things out of the bushes and sort of ground area. But the second thing that limiting them to walkways does is it significantly cuts down the amount of work that has to be done. So for those people who are concerned that charging the batteries and using the leaf blowers and it'll increase the amount of work, or using a rake, I believe in our zoning code, our properties need to be 60% sort of non-concrete, the 40%? 30 to 40%. Okay, so you essentially cut the work in half because you're not blowing the grass or the bushes or underneath the trees, and you're not blowing it into your neighbor's area. You're not blowing it into the street, which causes a lot of the sewage backup. And so I think we could look at taking a step further than what South Pasadena did. And at the very least, we should start with city operations. There's no reason why we can't put this, sort of set an example by starting with ourselves and doing the right thing, and then sort of moving over to the public. So I would like to take a stronger position here for the environment, for listening to the public, for doing years of analysis. We have the data, we have the information. I think we should act, and I think we should direct the staff to prepare what a draft ordinance would look like. We don't have to go to a first reading, but we should at least have the staff come back with what an ordinance could look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Anyone else? I think we've got, this is on as old business, and so we will take this matter to public safety with the intent of bringing something back to the full city council that includes more information and action consistent with the council discussion. Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yeah, I do appreciate Councilmember Williams, who was the one who championed this, and I think it's an important discussion. I also think the idea of thinking about limiting the use of these devices is worth further exploration. I haven't actually, I'm not an expert in that. I certainly would like to learn more about the technology. But I do think taking action sooner rather than later. This has been swirling around, and so I'm eager to get to a point where we can make a good decision, not just about transition, but uses, and as I mentioned, holiday uses. And I don't know how loud, I mean, if it's the issue is noise, and maybe that's not an issue of limiting the hours if the disruption is limited in terms of both where they're being used and how quiet they are. So I think we need to look at the limitations that we have set that are currently in our ordinance that are a function of having gas-powered leaf blowers. I would ask the staff look at this comprehensively, because it would be a different technology, and if there's direction to go down the pathway that Felicia mentioned around where they're used, that's a pretty significant paradigm change in terms of these devices. So I just think we need to look at the ordinance holistically.
Question. So,
Okay.
hey, Mayor, point of order. So should this go to committee? Should it come back to council?
My preference would be that it go to MSC. It seems that that would be the more appropriate committee. But given the suggestion that the utility have a role, that it be treated along the lines of a replacement program. I know it's been to public safety. It's also been to MSC at one point or another. It's been to Ed Tech. I mean, it's just been all over. And I understand the city attorney has opined that it go to public safety, but let me work with the staff on what committee would be
Because I think the issue was that
legal and
a
lawful.
lot of members of the council had, if we took it to another committee, all of the members of the council will have seen it. But now, since we have seen it, can it go to
Here it
MSC,
is.
which is the best-looking committee? And
No doubt.
as
no doubt.
Andy says, and I think the committee that would be appropriate because of the
I
public
agree
works
with you.
and
So let me work with the city
Thank
attorney
you.
and see, and with the intent of bringing it back.
As chair of MSC, obviously, we would be thrilled to take this up, and we were hoping to get a bite of the apple beforehand, but because of some of the
Yeah.
issues raised by the city attorney, we weren't able to.
Okay.
But we would be happy to kind of wrestle this down to ground and bring it back to the full council.
Let me see if we can accomplish that and fulfill your dreams and aspirations. Well, why don't we have other items on the agenda with lots of public comment and then a long closed session. Mr. Kennedy, I'm sorry, were you in the queue?
Based upon your comments that you just made, I'll defer. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Yeah, I'll work with the city attorney and we'll refer it to hopefully MSC. But if we can accomplish that, otherwise, whatever the legal opinion is. Okay, so we can expect more from that in hopefully a short time frame.
So by consensus, that's going to be handled by the mayor to be referred to a committee. Thank you.
Okay, so we will now turn to, thank you everyone, and thank you to the public for weighing in. Next, we'll turn to item 14, I'm sorry, we have a special agenda item that we need to, so we, at the last minute, we received an agenda item that needs to move forward. And this is an amendment to the fiscal year 2020 adopted operating budget for the Salvation Army Hope Center project.
So Mayor, what we need to do at this point to go to that special meeting item, we need to recess this regular meeting. So we will recess by consensus at 6:40 p.m., the regular meeting. And we are going to call to order a special meeting of the city council. And if I can have that.
And we don't need to take the roll for that, do we? I mean, the record will reflect the.
I could just call the roll quickly, Mayor. This is the time and place for a special meeting of the city council to discuss an amendment to fiscal year 2022 adopted operating budget for the Salvation Army Pasadena Hope Center Apartments project. This was noticed as a special meeting. So calling to order, Councilmember Hampton, are you present?
Blessed to be here.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison,
Here.
Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Still here.
Councilmember Williams,
Still here.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Still here.
Mayor Gordo.
I'm here.
There's a quorum of the council present.
All right, so this should be a fairly short item.
Mayor, we do have Bill Wong and Jim Wong here from the Housing Department. They're prepared to do a presentation, but in short, this item simply amends the budget to reappropriate $400,000 of Housing Successor Fund that was budgeted for the project, but because of the close of last fiscal year, it wasn't carried over into the new year. This is an important project that will bring on a number of affordable units and a food pantry for the community. I know Mayor, you and other members of the council were at last week's groundbreaking. So if you'd like a presentation, happy to do that. But otherwise, I think it's consistent with the actions the council's taken thus far.
Yes, and it's support for the Salvation Army Affordable Housing Project. And given I accepted on behalf of the city council thank yous for our support, I think we have already accepted that and we broke ground. I would
move approval, Mayor.
Thank you.
Or I'll second Councilwoman's moving
Rivas.
item.
I'll move it.
Ms. Rivas.
Member Williams.
Ms. Rivas, this is in the Council District 5. Ms. Rivas moves.
Yes, I would move it.
Mr.
Thank
Kennedy
you.
seconds. Thank you both. Roll call.
To approve the staff recommendation, Councilmember Hampton,
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
Motion is approved without opposition. We can now adjourn this meeting and we can reconvene the regular meeting.
Thank you.
So the regular meeting is reconvened at 6:43 PM.
Now we go to item 14. This is a presentation on state housing legislation and general plan implementation. A number of us have asked, including, all of us have asked to have a presentation on impacts of state housing legislation and its interplay with our own general plan. This is the time and place for that discussion, and we can receive a briefing and then give direction as appropriate. Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, and you're right. This is a follow-up discussion that got started a couple of weeks ago when staff brought forward the Lincoln Avenue specific plan. And while there were no concerns over that plan per se, there were questions on the part of the council and members of the public about how does our general plan process, our specific plan update, how is that affected by new state legislation that people are concerned about that have impacts on single-family residential properties and other things that the state is doing. So David Reyes and his able team from the planning department have put together tonight's presentation to provide context as to how all of this works, how it all fits, what we're doing to preserve our latitude within Pasadena to operate within context and frameworks set by the state. And then we've asked the council for some direction or some considerations as to how we see best to move forward, because we do believe we do need to move forward. There are a number of projects that have been waiting for the updated specific plans, some projects in particular that are key to the city's economic development strategy. And so with that, let me turn to Mr. Reyes to provide a presentation. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor and City Council, Mr. Rommel, thank you very much. I do want to take the council back just a little bit in terms of understanding and remembering that we do have a housing crisis in the state. And it's clear, we've talked about this before, production has not kept up pace with the population growth. and then there have been increases in rents that haven't kept up with, the incomes haven't kept up with the increases in rent. And therefore, in California, a majority, in fact, a vast majority of households are rent burdened. We've talked about this graph before. We see housing production sort of steadily decline in the state over time. And that's both multifamily and single family units in the state of California. And at the same time, what we see on the top of this chart are the rents and the increases in rents compared to, the change in rent and then the change in renter income. So incomes have not kept pace with the increases in rents, and that gap is widening. And as a result, what we see, and this is a chart that shows all levels of income in the state of California, extremely low income all the way to above moderate. And what we see is that, unfortunately, all of the lower renter households, those with 80% AMI and below, 80% of them are rent burdened. And rent burdened by definition is that at least 30% of your rent goes towards, of your salary, of your monthly income goes towards rent. And then severely rent burdened is when 50% of your salary goes towards rent. While the county of Los Angeles is the most populous in California, over 10 million, the city of Pasadena is a fraction, 1.4% of that. But yet we still do everything that we can. We are cognizant of that fact, and the policies that the city council has enacted have enabled us to really, I think, locally make a dent in some of these issues. While we can always do more, and the council is looking to do more, the council has enacted rules and regulations that are basically leading the way and trailblazing for affordable housing in the region. We were the first to have an inclusionary housing ordinance that was amended in 2019. We now have 20% of all the units that are built new must be set aside as affordable. Alternatively, there can be an in lieu payment. And to date, since its inception, we've collected $26 million and funded over close to 600 affordable units with the in lieu monies. We also use the in lieu money to help offset the cost of developers that want to actually build affordable. And we've helped almost 200 affordable units get built with some of those funds. We've also established a local menu that encourages folks to do affordable projects on site. And we've enacted ordinances that would allow the conversion of hotels to affordable housing. The city council has also adopted an SRO ordinance for the missing middle type of projects. And these are all things that the council has done within the last 3 years. So the city council's policies in Pasadena recognize the issues associated with the lack of affordable housing, and I think are looking to address those issues. In total, we have deed restricted over 4,000 units in the city in the various types of affordability, including special needs, Section 8, family and senior affordable housing. In addition, and this was talked about earlier at public comment, we have over 1,000 units that are in the pipeline that will be affordable. That's 1,021 units that the city council has directed either monies to or policies that have helped enact these 1,000 units to be affordable, deed restricted in the near future. The city council has also enacted policies related to its land use planning. And these are sort of a result of 1994 plan policies where there was a grand bargain made with the city. And we wanted to focus growth in certain areas of the city. And this is a diagram of the most recent land use element. This is a land use diagram. Everything in yellow, single family. And then we see in the middle and in the corridors, this is where our specific plans are. And this is a direct result of Pasadena recognizing that it needs to grow and saying this is where we're going to grow. We're going to put growth in our commercial corridors, in our central district. And those policies, again, go back as far as 1994 and have been continued to this day. I'll talk more about the city's general plan in a moment, but I think it's really important that we understand that in Pasadena, local control doesn't mean no. We have policies, we have numbers that back this up. We produce housing, we produce multiple affordable units in the city. We produce multifamily units that are market rate. And not every city does this. So the challenge that we have at the statewide level, again, we're a city of 140,000 people. And at the statewide level, not every city shares the same values that the city of Pasadena does. And that's resulted in the state legislation passing over 50 housing bills in the last 4 years. They include bills that would require and allow for incentives, penalties, removal of local control, enforcement issues, and funding. And literally 50 housing bills in the last 4 years. It's challenging for any department to keep up with that legislation. More recently, on September 28th, the governor signed an additional 31 new bills. The department literally cannot keep up with all of the bills that are coming. And it's a real challenge for a city like Pasadena that takes planning so seriously. What we wanted to talk about tonight, just very briefly, as was requested, was the issue regarding SB 9 and then state density bonus. So SB 9 will be the subject of further discussion with the city council as well as other commissions, but it was discussed at the last meeting, and I want to say that it has nothing to do with the specific plan process because SB 9 only applies to single family zones, and what it requires is a ministerial lot split and 2 duplexes on each lot, resulting in 4 units on an existing single family property. This is a bill that will go into effect January 1st. If you're in a historic landmark district, you are exempt if the landmark district is actually has been designated as a landmark by the city council, not just an eligible district. Also, deed restricted affordable housing units would be exempt. We can, as a city, impose objective standards so long as they do not preclude the construction of at least 2 800 square foot duplexes on each lot. We can also require 1 parking space, and we can impose up to 4-foot rear and side setbacks. And the objective standards are something that we're working on now. We'd likely be bringing a draft ordinance forward and study session in front of the Planning Commission in the coming months, so that we can have an ordinance that's local to us and would require compliance with the standards that the city council adopts. So there's some challenges with this. The lot split, each new lot can be as small as 1,200 square feet. Only 1 lot split is allowed at one time, so you can't have a 20,000 square foot lot and subdivide it multiple times. You get one time in the life of that lot. And the same owner cannot act in concert to split adjacent lots so that one owner or entity can't buy up an entire block based on the bill. So that's been a troubling issue for a lot of California cities in terms of how it might impact the character of their single family neighborhoods. And it's something that the department is looking at and seeing what we can do to bring forward an ordinance for Pasadena. We also talked about the state density bonus law, and the intent of that law is in recognition of the state housing crisis and many cities that aren't doing their fair share. It allows developers to have more market rate units in exchange for providing affordable units on site. In 2020, a new bill was passed that allows up to a 50% density bonus. And the requirements there are you need to provide at least 15% very low income on site, or you see the 24% low income or 44% moderate income. What we've talked about is some of these state density bonus projects result in projects that are out of character or out of scale with what we believe is appropriate for the city of Pasadena and out of compliance with our zoning code. And state law does this by design. It says you can have more than what the local jurisdiction will allow in exchange for providing affordable units. And these are done through concessions and incentives. We have locally an affordable housing concession permit process in compliance with state law. And what we've seen is since 2016 or the last 5 years, about 17% of all the multifamily projects had requested these affordable housing concession permits. So in terms of moving forward, our existing local land use regulations are superseded by state law in some regards. And that happens, and you see here, it happens about 20% of the time historically. When we started the general plan update, it was still in recognition of the idea of building and targeting growth in our corridors and in all of our specific plan areas. And I think the 2004 update that was adopted by the City Council actually states what the issue is pretty clearly. That, and this is how it was described there, absorbing new development and growth will largely involve recycling underutilized parcels and renovating existing structures, often replacing commercial uses with housing. Basically, we're a built-out city. There aren't a lot of empty parcels, and so therefore, parcels that are sort of underutilized, that means they have less density, and the idea is they would be replaced with higher density projects. And this, again, it was 2004 and was carried out in 2014 with the update. It was a 6-year effort. This 6.9 million represents not just the land use element. The transportation department completely revamped its entire process, given state law with respect to the level of service requirements and the way that we now have to measure traffic. There was a large effort done to create a new traffic model, and it did preserve what was known as the grand bargain in terms of focusing where our growth was. And it's really important when we talk about we need to reopen the general plan or change the general plan. What the land use element of the general plan does is it seeks to control development in 2 ways. It limits development by looking at the density and the FAR on a parcel, and it also imposes development caps. And again, this is a map showing the land use element that was adopted by the council in 2015. And this is the specific plan area that was also set forth in 2015. The caps that were established for the 8 areas, and I'll talk about those in just a moment, but it really did shift the residential units towards Central District, South Fair Oaks, and East Pasadena. And it reduced residential units in East Colorado, Fair Oaks, Orange Grove, and North Lake. And I think it's important when we talk again about the general plan, what does it actually do? Every single parcel has a land use designation in the city. And the blown up here on your screen shows that land use designation, and it provides a range of densities. Sort of the orange striped one, I'll just pick that out in the middle, is medium mixed use, and it provides for a range of a floor area ratio of 0 to 0.0 to 2.25 and a density of 0 to 87 units per acre. That's what the general plan does. It just provides a range, and then it then looks to the zoning code to provide the exact development regulations. So our specific plans that exist today are codified in the zoning code, and every parcel you can look it up and it says, this is how much square footage you can build. This is your FAR, and then this is your density. And it's not a range, it's an exact number. The general plan being more general was this idea was let's look to the specific plans and let's figure out what the right development standards are for the city. What does the city council, what does the community feel like the right development intensity should be? Here's a range, and so that's what we're working under today. We're working under this range. We're bringing forward updates to each specific plan, and we're asking the commissions, the community, and the city council ultimately, have we got it right? And when we propose an exact number for each parcel in the city in that specific plan. These were the development caps that the city council put in place in each of the specific plans. And you see at the central district at the bottom, over 4,000 units. And then you go east to East Pasadena, that was 750. And you can see where each plan identifies. So this is a further layer of a development regulation within a specific plan. And it was to be looked at every 5 years. And importantly, and again, these are all the development caps. It wasn't just for residential, it was for non-residential as well. We've not had a lot of non-residential development in the city. But if you look again at the central district, over 4,000 units, that's where the city council had focused its growth. And what we've seen in 1994, those numbers, the overall residential development caps, over 7,000 units, reduced in 2015 to 6,000, about 7,000. And then the commercial was cut in half effectively from about 12 million, to 6 million square feet. And so again, when we talk about development caps, they typically do not count against the affordable units, don't count towards the cap, except in the Fair Oaks Orange Grove plan. And then it's important to understand also that what council approved as part of the general plan was that caps can be converted between residential units and non-residential square footage, and then vice versa with the review every 5 years. So after the council approved the general plan in 2015, in 2018, council directed staff to update each of the 8 specific plans and do it all at once. And that's what we've been doing. We've engaged the council, the community in 3 rounds of visioning with respect to each specific plan. And we've just started to bring forward to the city council as decision makers, here's what we'd like to approve for the update to each specific plan. We started with Lincoln Avenue. The Planning Commission has also recommended approval of the East Colorado specific plan that we've not brought forward just yet. And again, it's the specific plans that regulate development, setbacks, heights, all of those things that are about development are found in the specific plan update. And so that's the appropriate place where we want to control development and we want to get the character of the community. That's done in the specific plans. The general plan by nature is just that. It's very general. It provides guidance or a blueprint. And now sort of the rubber's hitting the road with respect to the development. And I think the challenge that we've had as we look to update each one of these plans, we've had good community participation despite third round being virtual because of COVID. The challenge I think that we've had is that the state not only, you know, we talked about the 50 bills in the last 4 years and the 31 bills that were signed by the governor. I have, you know, a staff member now so almost solely dedicated to just tracking state housing legislation so that we can keep up and make sure that we're following the rules. We're constantly, you know, having conversations with HCD about what's going on. But what we're looking for is some direction. We do feel like that the Lincoln Avenue plan that we brought forward made sense. We thought we were being responsive to both community needs and the future vision of that plan. But I think that what we heard from the city council was correct. The plan didn't take into account the state legislation. And I don't think that that state legislation is going to stop. But so here we're seeking direction. We can either move forward, you know, recognize the need for more housing, knowing that SB 9 only involves single family residences and that only 17% of projects over the last 5 years actually take advantage of these affordable housing concession permits. We can just continue as staff has recommended. Alternatively, we can, you know that the state laws are not going to stop because there are so many cities in California that don't do what we do, and we're caught up in the middle of that. And in response to that, we can move forward, but recognize the potential impact and take into account a density bonus project situation, and also think about commercial development so that we wouldn't harm or impact those, and we can move forward. And at the same time, and this is an important component, Mayor, at the same time, we could amend the general plan. We've heard that we need to look at that and change that. So the idea would be, again, the land use diagram says, here's the general plan, it's 0 to 87 units per acre. And then the FAR being 0 to 2.25, that's this range that people talk about. As we update each specific plan, and if we land on a specific density and FAR, 48 units per acre, for instance, or 1.5 FAR, the general plan can then be amended to match the specific plan. And while there have been letters submitted that would say that we're reducing densities or lowering the amount of housing that can be built, that's actually not true. The amount of housing that we can build in the city of Pasadena is controlled currently by our development caps, and then the zoning. The zoning sets forth the allowed density. The range that sets forth in the general plan, all of our zoning is consistent with that range. In other words, 48 units per acre is consistent with 0 to 87 units per acre. It's within that range. And the idea that we would then snap the general plan to match the specific plan is completely consistent with the approach that was talked about when the general plan was being developed and adopted by the city council. And we're not lowering densities. In fact, in no scenario will we be proposing lowering the densities or intensities beyond existing zoning code. And in most cases, we're going to be recommending the city council increases above the existing, maybe not to the full level of the general plan, but above the existing. And I think that that's important. And the example that I showed here, Mayor, is this 48 units per acre on Lincoln Avenue. The existing density in one area was 16 units per acre. Staff thought that 48 units per acre made sense, even though the general plan said 0 to 87. What likely comes out of that is 32 units per acre. So we would like to move forward, and we'd like to take into account the state density bonus impacts, and therefore probably recommend lower densities and intensities on residential zoned properties and mixed use zoned properties compared to what we showed to the public and to the council and to the commissions in round 3. So that's the approach that we'd like to move forward with. And again, there's 2 options. Again, one is to move forward just as is, and the other is to really recognize that what the state is doing does have an impact on our local control and our ability to regulate land use and move forward as outlined in number 2. Mayor, we're here to answer questions. I want to thank staff, Andre Sahaki and David Sanchez, Jennifer Page for the help on this.
We do have 5 public comment cards. What's the will of the council? Are there opening questions, or maybe we should listen to public comment first and then come back to opening questions? Why don't we go to
public comment, please?
Yeah, public comment.
So before I call on the speakers, I want to announce the correspondence received for item 14. 3 letters were received in support of a detailed review and revision of the general plan, especially given the new housing legislation. 2 letters were received expressing support for the current draft of the East Colorado specific plan. 3 letters were received providing comments, recommendations related to the Central District specific plan, and 2 letters stating concerns with the city moving forward with any of the suggested changes or adjustments to the city's various plans / general plan and violating state law, specifically Government Code Section 66300B, with one of the letters urging the city to proceed with the specific plan update process with deliberate speed, namely as it relates to the Lincoln Avenue specific plan, given that it is ready for adoption, with the others to follow shortly thereafter. The city clerk's office also received 1 letter providing suggestions and commending staff for their thorough report on the housing crisis. With that, I will call on Erica Foy, followed by Anthony Manusos, Jill Shook, and let's see here. Nina Chomsky, and then Jasmine Richards Abdullah. Erica, if you want to unmute.
Ms. Boy?
If you can unmute your display. Can you ask her to? You did? Okay. We'll go to Anthony Manusos. And then we'll try and bring back Erica Foy. *6 to unmute, Anthony.
Hi.
All right, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate the staff report describing new state laws and how they might impact the city's general plan. And I agree that this Pasadena has done much better than most cities when it comes to affordable housing. And I was glad to learn that there are 1,000 units of affordable housing in the pipeline, including 227 under construction. However, I'd like to know the locations of all these affordable housing units. Unfortunately, 1,000 affordable units doesn't come close to meeting the real need or the RENA goals. We're supposed to plan for 3,000 units of affordable housing in the next 8 years. As the staff report indicated, the need is dire. 81% of low-income renters households are rent burdened, and 51% pay more than 50% of their income on housing. In the census tract where my Quaker meeting is located, the median income of a family of 4 is only $25,000. That means families must either spend all their income on rent or double up or triple up with other families. I've mentioned before that some promising proposals like rezoning congregational land has been needlessly delayed. And I'm glad to hear that the planning department is open to the idea of increasing density and considering some changes to the general plan or whatever it takes to reach the goals that we need. HCD has critiqued Pasadena's housing element and called for many substantive changes. It's also called upon the city to take action what local activists have recommended to increase the city's stock of affordable housing. I hope you'll take to heart the HCD's recommendations, as well as these new state bills. We need, let me repeat, we absolutely need 3,000 units of affordable housing in the next 8 years. This goal will be hard to reach, but I feel it's not unattainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's try and bring Erica Foy back in, and then Jill Shook, and then Jasmine Richards Abdullah, followed by, actually, yes, that's fine. Erica? Can you unmute? All right, we'll go to Jill Shook, followed by Jasmine Richards Abdullah, followed by Nina Chomsky. Jill? All right. Jasmine? Can you unmute?
Yeah, all right.
All right,
Cool, got
great,
it.
thank you.
Um,
This is on the general plan. Go ahead.
yeah, I know.
Okay,
I'm
all right.
highly intellectual, okay? I just asked you guys that you guys increase the current requirement of the units, that they be restricted to extremely low income and very low income. As per you guys' PowerPoint, it says the city and all housing projects of 10 units be set aside 20% of the units affordable. Requirement of that is 10%, and only 5% be set aside for low income and 5% be set aside for very low income. Meaning that everybody out here is like very low income and extremely low income. I think that you guys should set aside 10% for both of those. And as I was looking at affordable housing, right? Affordable housing, they put their tax brackets at $200,000 a year. Like, you know what I mean? We need very low income in this community. Affordable housing is like for people who make a lot of money. Like, we don't make a lot of money. So I think we should just reevaluate what very low income, what affordable housing actually means, and how we need more extremely low income and very low income. It's 0 to 30% of the Americans' median income, which is $67,521. We don't even make that, like we're making way less than that. So I think we just need to reevaluate that and make more very low income housing. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll bring in Nina Chomsky. Nina, go ahead.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
We can. Go ahead.
I want to comment, thank you, on the section of the staff report on SB 9. And I found it, at least from my perspective, misleading, and it omits a number of important facts. First of all, SB 9 has nothing to do with affordable housing. In fact, it will result in a bunch of rental housing that will be very high rent, very upper income housing. And the staff report seems to put it together with the discussion of affordable housing and brag about the thousands of units that can come in Pasadena out of SB 9. This is something we need to rethink, and I would remand this part of the staff report, like we did earlier in remanding, back to the staff for a rethink if you're going to brag about the results of SB 9. And let's be accurate. It's not 4 units on 2 lots where there was one before. There was one house on one lot. It's a ministerial lot split, and it's not a benign duplex bill. It can result in up to 8 units when you add in the ADUs. So duplexes plus ADUs, 8 units on 2 lots. And let's be also more accurate that there's no discussion, there's no allowance for CEQA, there's no infrastructure that's required, infrastructure improvements. We're going to have increased water and sewer and everything else impacts from this. Our urban forestry on private property is going to be arguably decimated, as we have only 4 feet around for setbacks. And our tree ordinance, which is already weak on private property, is going to become even weaker if it's even going to survive. And quoting the Turner organization at Berkeley, which sounds like it must be some liberal think tank, it's backed by all the developers, the predatory developers that are going to go to, and also Wall Street interests and moneyed interests that are going to, other than historic areas, which is good that they're exempt, we think. It's going to be a hard test as to what exactly meets the historic standards here.
30 seconds.
They're going to go to working class, let's call them neighborhoods in Pasadena, and not to West Pasadena where land costs are still very high, but to places where land costs are lower, and start in a predatory manner acquiring these areas and converting where hardworking people have worked their whole lives to own their homes and to increase the generational wealth that they get from ownership. And all of a sudden there will be conversions to almost permanent rental units over the long run. And this is going to be terrible for parts of our
Ms.
city.
Chomsky, your time has expired.
Okay, thank you. What are we going to do? We need to resist, and we need that ordinance sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's bring in Jill Shook and see if we can. Ms. Shook, can you unmute your display and provide public comment? Okay, we'll go to Erica Foy. Erica, there you go. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council and City staff. I hope you are well. Thank you for your time tonight, and thank you, Nina Chomsky, for your comments, which Madison Heights fully supports. Madison Heights is pleased to see the discussion on our general plan and the concerns that we are seeing about future proposed densities. We appreciate your consideration of looking at the maximum densities throughout our city, because it seems what is planned now will shape our city into something we never imagined, a city with significant skyline and lots of mountain views. Madison Heights is not only concerned about the many adjacent new heights of buildings that would jet up against single-family neighborhoods, but we are also very concerned about setbacks. We would like to see setbacks increase from 0 to minimal to 10 feet to 15 feet whenever possible, with a minimum setback of 5 feet throughout our entire city. This adjustment will improve walkability, allow for in-ground tree plantings, and add an overall improved neighborhood ambiance. We believe it would also be ideal to see setbacks for housing, retail, and commercial developments increase gradually as you get closer to neighborhoods like ours with single-family homes, in order to create an attractive buffer zone between quiet residential neighborhoods adjacent to areas like South Lake and then more urban areas like North Lake. What we see happening is that the minimal to 0 setbacks do not allow for in-ground trees around the periphery of buildings. By planning for deeper setbacks throughout the entire city, we can encourage more foresting of trees, which is not only more beautiful and pleasant, but will create an environmentally friendly community and add comfort, shade, and honor our reputation as a tree city. If I were there in person, you know I'd be handing you lots of photos and examples of our city where the lack of setbacks are really unattractive and do not allow for foresting of trees. I encourage all of you to drive by 711 Walnut and question if this development is really what you want to see all over our city. The problem needs to be fixed by our general plan and not just the specific plans. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Foy.
Thank you. That completes public comment on this. We weren't without being able to get to Jill. So.
Okay, let's start with Vice Mayor Wilson, followed by Mr. Kennedy, and then Ms. Rivas. Not sure who asked first.
I think Mr. Kennedy was ahead of me in line, so I defer to John.
Okay, you're not in the queue, and so that's, your hands are up, so. Mr. Kennedy, were you first? This is honor system here.
If,
Why don't you go ahead and
everyone-
go? The Vice Mayor is deferring to you.
Mr. Reyes, what are we actually contemplating here? I'm a little unsure,
Yeah,
uncertain.
I apologize that,
Let me ask the question this time, which is possibly rare. I would like to know if what we are contemplating is to make the specific plans consistent with the general plan. First question.
yes, the goal of our specific plan efforts would be to do just that.
And then secondly, are there cases, based upon what you've shared with the council tonight, are there cases where the longer shelf life of the general plan, we could actually get by council approval, more density and more FAR and more higher height because the council determines that TOD areas require such to have less impact on the environment and increase likelihood that those who live in such areas will use public transit and not use vehicles that increase carbon imprint or footprint.
Councilmember Kennedy, it's highly likely that if we get the direction from the city council to move forward with option 2, we would be back in front of the planning commission and we would look to revisit proposed heights and densities. It doesn't mean that we're reducing everything. So there are certainly going to be areas within the general plan within the city that we still think are appropriate for greater densities, and that's where we want to focus our growth, and likely that will be within TODs. But I think the point here is that we do want to make sure our recommendations potentially
allows, which may be different from what our community locally allows. So I want to, again, be sure that we're not doing anything that appreciably reduces the density in certain areas, and also FAR, as well as I think that's it.
And no action this evening, council member, no action that the council takes this evening would that result. We would still have the discussion on a plan by plan basis with the planning commission and the city council about what the appropriate heights and densities are for each parcel. So this evening is really looking at larger direction, whether we move forward or not.
Right.
And all of that, David, that will come back when?
Depending on what council's direction is, we would come back to, probably have to go back to the, we'd want to consult with the city attorney on whether we bring back the Lincoln Avenue to the planning commission before we come back to the city council. But we would keep moving, and we've already scheduled further discussions with the planning commission for the South Fair Oaks plan on October 27th. So we're continuing to move. I would imagine that we'd come back with Lincoln as soon as we can, and I could have an update in the newsletter this Thursday.
And Councilmember Kennedy, if I may offer a more simplistic view of it, given the concerns over state law, we've heard some members of the public say, wait, stop, even though the city has invested numerous years, well over a decade, $7 million, hundreds of meetings, developing our new general plan, and then all the effort involved in the specific plans, we should stop, take an eraser to that dry erase board, start over. We think that would be a loss for our city, but we do need to recognize that there is impacts as a result of state law. And so, as Mr. Reyes has laid out tonight, from the staff's perspective, we think it's a reasonable approach to allow our specific plans to move forward, which you saw the slide. They're, in terms of densities, they're significantly less generous than the 94 plan, but allow these to proceed, but as they come forward case by case, provide the council some opportunities to make some adjustments here and there to sort of offset the impacts of state law, but making sure that we don't scrap the whole thing that has been the subject of so much good work and effort, and is also key to moving forward with a number of projects that have been waiting for some time for the specific plan update.
Okay, so what I just simply like to know, I think it's helpful. If the council takes no action, David, where are we?
Councilmember Kennedy, I know you asked this of David, but I'll say what I think. If you take no action, we would read that as proceed as we were. But the reality is, as every specific plan item comes before you, you'll be confronted with the challenges of people saying it's too dense, we're worried about state law, what's the impact? And so we think it's unavoidable. Now, I'll ask David if he has a different opinion.
Everything I've heard and everything I've read related to state law is in fact granting more density, more height, et cetera. So how is that the case?
Sure. No, Councilmember, let me be clear. What I'm saying is the council will have to react to the perception on the part of residents that the state is cramming these laws down our throat that change or remove control from the council. And in response to that, you need to start over. I'm not speaking to actual impacts. I'm speaking to the perception and the fact that the council will be confronted by these issues anyway. And so what Mr. Reyes has offered, I think, is a thoughtful approach that will allow the council to consider and to take in input, and in some cases probably make some actual adjustments, but by and large, keep the general plan process intact and keep the specific plan process intact.
So why isn't it that the clear recommendation is status quo, and that we deal with state law as it rolls down on a case-by-case basis.
Again, I'm not, I should stop and let David speak, but the nuance in what I'm saying is it's, to some extent, it is about the impact of state law, but we deal with those as they come down. For instance, in the Lincoln Avenue specific plan, I don't think there was a single residentially zoned parcel in that specific plan. Is that correct, David?
Not single family. There was one area of multifamily.
Right, and yet the concern over the state law is its impact on single-family zone properties, and people saying, wait, we can't adopt a specific plan because what the state's doing to residentially zoned properties, but that's not really the subject of the specific plan. And I'm probably not making myself clear, but I'm trying to...
It is difficult for me to understand why we wouldn't continue with just the status quo and deal with on a case-by-case basis what occurs in the state. It seems a futile effort to think that the usurpation of local control by the state will cause this council or any other city or municipality to fight in a way that they're going to be successful. We have only seen that type of fight successfully in one narrow area recently.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
we still have another item where we're going to have 21 speakers. And so I'm going to ask that we limit this round to questions and then debate how we move forward with this item before we move on to the item with 21 speakers. Did you have any other questions?
Mayor, can I ask a quick question?
Sure, please.
Just
And then we'll...
process question. Mayor, are you suggesting that we're going to come back at this item at the end?
No, what I'm saying is let's limit it to questions. Let's do a round of questions and then we'll come back to debating how we proceed.
Fair enough. I've let my sentiments be known, and I'm more in favor of status quo, if I'm understanding this correctly, and then dealing with decisions that are forced upon the council or upon this council on a case-by-case basis, so we'd have the greatest latitude as exists today related to density and height.
Thank you.
Density and height.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next is Vice Mayor Wilson, followed by Jess Rivas, Ms. Williams, and I think Mr. Madison has also raised his hand now.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll hold my comments, but I just had a number of questions for staff. David, I think the impetus for this discussion is really the litany of, 50 or so bills from Sacramento that are housing oriented that have come into place since the general plan. Those are impacting our zoning and planning for residential aspects of our zoning code and really have an impact our thinking for commercial districts. Is that correct? I just want to focus our energy on where the kind of disruption is.
That's correct. Not to the commercial areas. Okay.
And I do think that's important. And once again, they haven't meddled with that. And I think a lot of thought has got into that area. And I know we have some important economic development activities that are dependent on that. So I'd encourage this council to figure out how to allow that to move forward, perhaps independently if necessary. Dave, you mentioned that SB 9, I know it passed, goes into effect in January 22nd or January of next year. We'll have an opportunity to have a local ordinance. Can you describe kind of what that will address? Because it feels like Sacramento has pretty much taken the ball and run with it. Where will we have some latitude in terms of figuring out how to localize that?
Vice Mayor, I think first and foremost, it's important that we state what the state law allows and minimize it to 4 units. if we do nothing and are sort of laissez-faire about it, one of the speakers was correct. There could be up to 8. And I think it's important that we state that we are only interested, not interested, but that there's only 4 that are permitted. The other areas are a little more nuanced, and the state does allow jurisdictions to create objective design standards, zoning regulations, if you will, as long as they don't preclude the development of 2 800 square foot units. So we can require things like a certain amount of open space, and they might have to reconfigure the 800 units so that it looks more like a courtyard. We can say, hey, you can't do 2 stories in certain instances, and then they
Okay.
can. So those sorts of things exist, and we want to work.
That's helpful.
We want to work through the planning commission to come before the city council with that.
I wasn't sure if they had usurped our ability to set those types of kind of maybe design guidelines. So it sounds like that's important work to be done. You did answer one of my questions preemptively on whether SB9 was 1 to 4 or 1 to 8 units. So it sounds like there's some ambiguity there, and we need to clarify that. Then you mentioned syncing as we go through the specific plans, syncing the general plan with the specific plan and doing a general plan amendment. Did I hear that right?
That's correct, Vice Mayor. One of the challenges that I think exist for many community members that are engaged was during the development of the general plan process, it was always envisioned that the actual heights and densities would be set through the specific plan update.
Right.
And so we have this range that exists in the general plan that controls density and FAR. And once the city council settles on what the appropriate heights and densities are through the specific plan, we would then, as we have consistently in the past, have the general plan amended so that it matches the specific plan. So previously, before this 2015 ordinance, the general plan was the exact same as the specific plans. The ranges didn't exist, and so that would be the objective for this update.
It feels like it would be kind of more of a blanket statement of where the specific plans, represent something more, have been defined, that would kind of articulate and supersede the prior specific plans. But it sounds like we're going to have to update the general plan, kind of item by item throughout the city. Is that what you're suggesting?
That's right, in conjunction with the specific plan update.
Okay, then the last item, in keeping to my questions, I do believe, and I think one of the speakers referenced, that we did get comments back from HCD on our draft housing element. I think I saw a note about that as well. Does their input have any bearing on the conversation, or was there anything we should know about that feedback that should be considered during this discussion?
I don't think at this time, Vice Mayor, we will be working through that letter with both the Mayor's Housing Task Force as well as the Planning Commission before coming back. I don't think that we need to really stop what we're doing with the specific plan update in order to address the issues raised in the HCD letter, which was largely a form letter.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions, and I'm glad we're taking this up, and this has been super helpful. And by the way, I thought the presentation in terms of recapping lots of moving pieces and lots of history was very informative to the conversation. So thank you for setting it up that way. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next was Councilmember Rivas, followed by Mr. Madison.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one really quick, actually 2-part question for you, David. A couple of the emailed public comments mentioned that there's a government code section that prohibits adjusting density downward to account for the density bonus. So 1, is that an accurate representation of the state law? And 2, does your second proposal avoid violating that law because it's only suggesting that we adjust the proposed densities in the draft specific plans as opposed to going into the past and adjusting those?
The statement is correct, and there are cities that have done that. Especially once their housing element's approved, they then go back and change general plans, and I won't name those cities. We've never done that. We don't. So the first statement is correct, that there is a state law, and it's known as SB 330, that prohibits a city from lowering densities. And in no case are we lowering densities beyond the existing today. And as I suggested, the approach that staff would like to move forward with is going to increase those densities. The general plan range is just that, it's a range, but it doesn't necessarily control the development in the city of Pasadena. The zoning code has an actual density, 48 units per acre, 68 units per acre, whatever number that is, and that's what somebody can build to today. The range that exists is just that, and the idea that we're looking to do is to eliminate that ambiguity so that the public, that property owners, everybody knows exactly what they're allowed to build and what the future of the city would look like, and that's why we're proposing the amendment to the general plan.
Got it. Thanks for that clarification.
Thank you. Mr. Madison?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't really have any questions. I do have some views and comments that I'll share when it's appropriate.
Okay. So I have one question. Does item, the second alternative allow us to limit would that allow us to shrink the TOD areas? Would that be something that's on the table? One of the concerns I've heard from residents is the TOD areas are so vast and reach deep, much further than a transit-oriented
So Mayor,
area should.
In some instances, the state law, many of the housing policies and legislation, they rely on their own definition of a TOD, and it's within a half mile of a major transit stop. And so it doesn't matter what we do locally. There's a state law that does control what that looks like. Locally, we do have our own TODs as well, and within that TOD, we have parking reductions and things like that that are related to sort of transit ridership and looking to increase ridership within a TOD, unbundling parking, reducing the parking. I think the idea, though, or one of the concerns that I've heard, Mayor, is that we're proposing too much density and height in these areas, and that's something that could be looked at each specific plan level.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've talked to a lot of residents about the issue of development in heights over the course of the last 2 years, and I can tell you that, it's not just a perception that people have that the state is imposing. I mean, it's real, and you've just given us an example of that. But in terms of the TODs, some of them reach into in and around neighborhoods, and then does that trigger higher densities? Because not necessarily the state definition of a TOD, the half a mile, but our own definition goes beyond that.
Right.
And what is the impact to density? Does then that qualify for more density?
It does not locally. And SB 50, which was a state bill, which was defeated, would have required that additional density in single-family neighborhoods. And that's not proposed, and nobody locally gets additional density by way of our TOD.
Okay, so that's my question. So the additional density comes with the state's definition. Our TOD definition does not impact that.
Correct. You don't get additional density just because you're within that TOD.
Within our definition of a TOD.
That's correct.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So that completes again, we still have another matter to deal with that has a large